Hello and welcome back to this damn fool idealistic crusade. This video is my Criterion Collection sale recommendations for this year's July half off at Barnes & Noble sale, which is now the sort of annual holiday for cinephiles. So we all wait for to pick up new and old Criterion titles we haven't gotten yet, and is a fantastic way, of course, to make great savings and make your dollar go further, and also chip away at the really enticing box sets and new releases. Now, I decided to do something a little bit special and basically use my own personal methodology of how I decide which titles to pick up or go for first. So this isn't just my specific recommendations for Criterion titles to pick up, but this is also ones that I can firmly give a positive review. So these are going to be titles that are either the best available editions currently in the world, or have both the best picture and sound in addition to great new extras, or are the best of any releases currently available across the board. So that's what I'm limiting myself to, so that way it's not just recommendations, but I think these are also all going to be titles that are going to be completely the most well worth your money, again, across the board in terms of AV specs and audio quality compared to previous editions, and the extras and the entirety of the package. Now, first and foremost, the sale is the best time to go after the big Criterion box sets they started doing, like the Essential Fellini set I have behind me, or the Bergman set, the Agnes Varda set, or the very large Godzilla Toho set. That's going to give you the most significant savings. Of course, other box sets like the Noel Coward and David Lean box, other things like that, that's going to give you the most savings, and they are great ideas to go for in the sale, but they aren't always necessarily the most perfect releases due to some of their packaging designs, like on the Fellini set, in terms of how the discs are contained. And again, I am trying to focus specifically more on individual titles, but of course, as I said, most people are going to be looking at the bigger box sets, which are on a significant discount during the sale. So it is advisable, if you're interested in any of these, obviously, to get them while they're on sale. Now, first, I wanted to start with three titles. These are ones that I still highly recommend, but they aren't necessarily the perfect across-the-board releases I'm going to be focusing on. But these are three titles that I think Criterion has done the best release of in terms of what exists on disc, but I do think they could be just a little bit better, particularly in the audio. So the first is their beautiful release of Notorious, one of Hitchcock's all-time masterpieces, a film that everyone must own in their collection and watch innumerable times because it is one of the truly great, perfect masterpieces of the cinema, and I don't say that lightly. This was the Hitchcock title I was hoping Criterion would redo on Blu-ray the most, and of course I cherish my Criterion DVD, which was the very first Criterion DVD I ever purchased in my teens. So I have a long history with this film. I've owned it on practically every format, but unfortunately what holds this release back is the audio doesn't sound the greatest, but unfortunately none of the releases I'm aware of really sound all that great, and they seem to be mastered from the same 35mm source across the board. I also have the old Criterion CAV Laserdisc, which sounds similar, but I'm still thinking this could probably sound better, but again, it might just be an elements condition thing. But this is still a beautiful Blu-ray release with some really wonderful new extras. I think it's an essential Criterion title that I now own three different Criterion releases of, between the original Laserdisc, the DVD special edition, and now this Blu-ray. So I have the Criterion trifecta complete for Hitchcock's 1946 masterpiece Notorious. But again, I do wish the audio sounded a little bit better, but again, that may be entirely due to the source element, because all three releases do sound pretty similar. But that's why I wanted to put it in the honorable mention, simply because I wish the audio was a teensy bit better in terms of the quality of the presentation. Next is a disc I've reviewed on this channel already that I think is an essential disc of one of the great iconic films with a great extras package and some essential extras. That's It Happened One Night from 1934, directed by Frank Capra, written by Robert Riskin. Really the film that helped to solidify the screwball comedy ever afterwards. One of the great iconic films, one of the American classics that if you haven't seen, when you see it for the first time, it's like you've seen it before because it's been ripped off and lifted from so many times that it's become part of the cinematic lexicon. It is one of the immortal films of the entire genre of romantic comedies and screwball comedies, but it is simply put one of the immortal films. This is from Sony's 4K restoration, has a fantastic picture transfer and extras package, including Capra's surviving very first directorial feature in the silent era, which is fascinating to see, and for Capra fans, worth the entire purchase of the disc. The only issue here is, again, in the audio. This is a Sony restoration, and they did a Blu-ray overseas that some people have said actually does sound a little bit better than the Criterion release, which has additional cleanup and noise reduction applied, which I wish they hadn't done. The Capra films all have been, for the most part, for the Columbia films, restored by Sony in-house, and they've all had varying audio restorations because most of them do not have very good elements, and they were reissued and printed to death, and it really varies on the quality between the Capra films in terms of their audio presentation. Some have really great audio, and some have really poor audio, and even with digital tools and advancements in what you can do in restoration, they don't always sound the greatest. So this is still a fantastic disc. I just wish they hadn't done the additional pass of noise reduction on the audio, but it's still the finest release that is available in terms of the overall package. And if you've only seen the older DVDs or any prior release to the Sony restoration of It Happened One Night, it will be like you're seeing the film brand new for the first time. It is a completely new experience, and once again, my hat goes off to Sony for their amazing restoration work and really saving the Capra titles with these 4K restorations. And then last for the honorable mentions is Spine 1100, which is Criterion's release of The Incredible Shrinking Man, the 1957 science fiction landmark classic directed by Jack Arnold based on the Richard Matheson novel. I reviewed this disc in pretty great length on this channel, so you can look at my video to hear my thoughts about it. It's a brand new 4K master from Universal. It has a phenomenal extras package and this wonderful art and an outstanding commentary track. I still think this is one of the best discs of last year, of 2021, but unfortunately there is some softness in the image, like perhaps some DNR was going on, and the audio, while good, I don't think quite sounds as good as the old OpenMat Laserdisc that I have. It seems like some noise reduction was applied, and that was probably by Universal, because this was a Universal master. So all that said, I still think this is the best overall package, and if you've never seen the film before, it's probably not going to jump out at you because you'll be your first time watch, but the overall package and the phenomenal supplemental section really make this one of the super stuffed Criterion editions in terms of the additional contents and features. Plus, this is one of the most iconic, amazing 1950s science fiction films ever made. It is a completely timeless classic of its genre. It deserves to be better known, better regarded as the work of art that it's always been. So it was great news hearing Criterion was going to release it. It's just unfortunate that it seems there are some issues baked into the Universal Master. So that's why I have it in my honorable mention section. Now, moving on to the recommendations list of all the editions that I think are really fantastic. So to start with the box set I'm going to talk about, I would suggest people picking up the Bruce Lee His Greatest Hits box set. I reviewed this in great detail on this channel, so a lot of these will sort of go hand in hand with discs I reviewed already, but this is a phenomenal package, and in the half-off sale, it is available at a dirt cheap price. You get the iconic yellow and black artwork, which is really nice, the nice digipack fold out. You get Lee's entire major filmography in brand new transfers, 4K masters provided by Fortune Star, and then Warner Brothers doing brand new 2K scans of both the original theatrical cut and extended versions of Enter the Dragon. And it is the presentation of Enter the Dragon, which is exclusive to this release, that I think makes it worth the entire purchase for Bruce Lee fans. The supplemental features package is truly extensive with multiple commentaries, documentaries, and the works, really. Some of this does pretty much repeat and dovetail with what Shout Factory already did with their Bruce Lee releases, so there is a question of people wondering if they should upgrade to this set or not. Again, I think the treatment of Enter the Dragon in this release is worth the entire purchase. Not only does it restore the original theatrical cut, but it restores the film's original mono mix, which has not been available on home video since the early 1990s Laserdisc, which was the last release of the theatrical cut. The mono track has been scanned and transferred by Warner Brothers and restored. It's in lossless quality with both versions of the film and sounds excellent. So if you're a fan of Bruce Lee and if you love Enter the Dragon, this set is a must-own. It's a no-brainer, and again, it is stuffed to the literal gills with extras, and in the half-off sale, I think this is one of the most enticing and attractive of the box sets you can purchase in terms of the overall value that you're getting in terms of content. The film's on display, Lee's entire major filmography, but again, I think the real draw is the wonderful treatment of Enter the Dragon, which pretty much wipes the floor with the prior Warner Brothers releases for including both cuts and the film's original audio, which again has not been available on home video since the early 1990s. Next is one of the greatest films ever made, in my opinion. This was a film that was very hard to come by. It did not really have any major video releases, particularly not here in the US, and was very obscure. I had to wait many years until I caught a very late night TCM screening as a budding young cinephile that I waited and waited and waited for after seeing it in the local TV newspaper listings, because I would scan the schedule for the week and looking for rare films that I was really wanting to see or what would be coming up. And of course, it was always on a school night at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and you'd have to then try and fiddle with the VCR. So it was amazing when this was done quite a number of years ago now, from a brand new 2K restoration with a full extras package. Again, I think this is absolutely one of the greatest films ever made, which is the 1951 masterpiece directed by Billy Wilder, Ace in the Hole. It is quite possibly Wilder's masterpiece. I find it very hard to pick exactly one favorite, greatest of them all Billy Wilder film, because I think he was a genius and one of the greatest talents to ever be involved in the motion picture medium. And of all of his great films, and I could make the case for pretty much all of them, I find it very hard to choose the one to rule them all, because you have Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard, so many iconic films, The Apartment, and I usually find myself sort of flip-flopping between those and others, but Ace in the Hole is a staggering film that is extraordinarily powerful, prescient beyond this is really the definition of a prescient film. It was made in 1951, but it was so scathing. It was such a scathing indictment of essentially what we now term a media circus, and really of the American populace at large, that it was a terrible box office failure. It was actually pulled from release, then reissued later on with a different title. That didn't work. And then it was pretty much not really seen for decades outside of rare screenings or television airings. There were some random and fleeting foreign video releases. I think there was a Region 2 DVD at one point, but that was really about it. And then Criterion released this first on DVD, then on this wonderful Blu-ray. This is the original Digipack full fold-out. This, of course, is now, you might still find it on some store shelves, but they've transitioned over into the modern Criterion style. So the original Digipack release has the 2-disc DVD contents, and then everything is on a single Blu-ray. So, of course, now you would just get the modern keep case version that just has the Blu-ray, and I guess they've redone this in a smaller design because the booklet is printed in a fold-out, beautiful newspaper-type design. this is easily one of my favorite custom Criterion booklets. I don't like to go much into the plot of this film because it's one of those that, because it is obscure, most people haven't seen this, or they've maybe read about it some, but it's a film that needs to be seen with a completely open mind without any spoilers whatsoever. It is one of the truly great film noirs. It is sort of also bridging into other genres. It's one of the great Kirk Douglas performances. And again, I think that if you had to choose the most scathing of all film noirs, you would have a very few select films like, of course, Kiss Me Deadly, many of the great Fritz Lang crime pictures, particularly like The Big Heat. But I think this actually tops them all. And if I had to choose my favorite Wilder film or what I thought was Wilder's absolute masterpiece, I'm probably going to be flipping between Sunset Boulevard, Double Indemnity, but especially The Apartment and Ace in the Hole. Again, this is one of the most truly dark and unforgettable films you will ever see, and it is clearly obvious why this was a complete failure in 1951, even coming off the massive success of Sunset Boulevard. It has all the cynicism of that film, but it does not have the undercurrent of dark humor and self-satire of the film industry to sort of undercut it and make it more palatable. There is none of that in this film. This is pure, full-on, absolutely a scathing indictment of American society, and its power has not been diluted at all, one bit, and it is just as prevalent today in 2022 as when it was made in 1951. This is one of the truly great films. I cannot recommend it highly enough, and this is still the best edition that exists from a new 2K restoration. So again, if you like the older style of packaging, you can look at some Barnes & Nobles, and they will still have the original versions on the shelf if they haven't been purchased, but it has now transitioned over into a standard keep case. Of course, I'm going to also talk about the 4K Blu-ray combo release of Citizen Kane, which is Criterion's most important and biggest item in terms of modern releases. The fact that not only they're going into 4K, but they were able to license Citizen Kane, meaning the original Spine #1 from 1984, the very first Criterion release, is back in the collection. And of course, it being Kane, the legacy that it brings with it, the big film, the great man himself has returned to Criterion, and they were able to license it away from Warner Brothers. They've come up with a phenomenal extras package. There are 2 entire Blu-ray discs of additional features. I went over all of those in my as exhaustive as I could make it Blu-ray review. Unfortunately, it is not a perfect release. The packaging is really appalling. So it is a very good idea to get a copy of this in store so you can actually look and try to get one that isn't dinged up. But of course, you will have to get used to the very poorly designed fold-out packaging. Again, I went over all of this in my review of the release, but this is, of course, the really, truly awkward quad design with the booklet inside and everything. And thankfully, now the defective disc issue has been taken care of. So if you're getting a copy in the store, they should all be the replacement copies, the reissued versions without the defective Blu-ray Disc 1. But you will want to make sure, just in case, if you look on the back, they've actually made a corrected UPC. I believe it's a sticker. So if you look at that, you can actually tell on copies in the store, just to make sure that it is the corrected version without the defective disc. And if you just so happen to buy one of these first pressings, you can still get your disc replaced through Criterion's replacement program by either destroying it or mailing it to them, and they'll send you a replacement disc. But from what I'm seeing, all the copies in stores should be the corrected version. But since this is a more expensive title, being 4K, it is a great idea to pick up any of their 4K combo releases while they're on sale, because it knocks them down to $24.99, which is a significant savings. And for all of the amazing things in this set. The fantastic extras package, which will take you quite some time to go through, plus the iconic film in both Blu-ray and 4K, and this brand new transfer, which is absolutely wipes the floor in picture and sound with the prior Warner Blu-ray release, so there's no reason to hang on to that. It is an improvement in picture and sound, dramatically so. My only other issue, of course, is the audio. It has had some noise reduction applied to it. It's light, but unfortunately that makes it sound not quite as good as some of the older analog releases. Again, I went over this in my video review, so please do check that out if you want further information. But all that aside, this is still the overall best release of Citizen Kane. It is a fantastic must-own release. This is one of the discs that you must own if you have a Blu-ray player, or if you're at all a film lover, you must own a copy of this. This is one of those I wouldn't just recommend. This is one I would literally implore everyone to pick up. Even if you're not a fan of the film, or you only watch it occasionally, you still need a copy of this on the shelf, and the extras package is truly fantastic because, again, it goes onto 2 entire full additional Blu-ray discs. So for $24.99, you are certainly getting every penny's worth in terms of the transfer improvements, the overall content, and of course then you can be like the rest of us and live and gripe with this horrendous packaging design. Then I want to go over just 6 more standalone regular titles. If you were looking for some standard titles, which will be, of course, $19.99, to either get 1 or 2 additional things, you're looking for something and that has great transfer specs in both audio and visual, and also something with some really great extras. So it's basically, I think these are 6 perfect must-own titles that will get you a definite bang for your buck. These are all absolute masterpieces that deserve and should be watched time and time again. So again, I think these are 6 essential titles that also have fantastic presentation quality across the board. First up is Spine 833, one of the truly great masterpieces of the cinema, 1942's Cat People, one of the greatest horror films ever made, and the revolutionary first film in Val Lewton's RKO horror cycle, directed by the great Jacques Tourneur. This film is really the crystallization of everything the Lewton unit did. It was their first and most successful film. I still think it is the best and the most special of the 9 horror films they made. But the whole 9 film canon of the Lewton unit is something I return to every single year, and I think they are some of the absolute majestic artworks of the entirety of the cinema. They absolutely terrify you. They stay with you for the rest of your life, and they also make you an emotional wreck due to the sheer complexity and the absolute 3-dimensional human characters in every single one of the films. They are meticulously manufactured to be the most artistic, expressive films they could possibly be on a B film budget at RKO. And Cat People is the first and most iconic of these. So if you've always wanted to get into the Lewton films, or if you're a horror fanatic and you've never seen these, this is the Criterion edition of Cat People. The other films have mostly been released by other studios. There are still 2 more that have not gotten released yet, and it is rumored or thought that perhaps Criterion may have the rights to those, and hopefully if either they or someone else releases them soon, so we can have all the films on Blu-ray. This was from a brand new 2K restoration. It repeats the Warner DVD extras and excellent Greg Mank commentary. It does add a wonderful interview with Tourneur, and so it has a fantastic extras package. The one drawback, well, I guess I should say there are 2 minor points. The other Lewton films, some have gotten 4K scans because they have been done later, so it would have been great to have this from a 4K scan. I'm hoping that happens at some point if we get a new 4K transfer and 4K release of Cat People, because it does truly deserve it. But unfortunately, it doesn't have the wonderful Bruce Eder commentary from Criterion's Laserdisc release. which I also have and really enjoy. So that's the one thing that's missing here that is really unfortunate, because it's a great Criterion Laserdisc commentary track, but we still get the great Greg Mank commentary, and you can find the Criterion Laserdisc release if you're a fan like I am. It's not too expensive, so I love having both. Rather nice art on this release too. The audio also sounds great. It hasn't been hit with additional noise reduction and things, and it pretty much sounds very similar to what was on the Warner DVD. The Laserdisc release has a little bit more noise in it, but is otherwise the same. So pretty much all the audio releases of the film that I'm aware of sound, again, relatively the same. So I do fully recommend this release. It is a must-own, because it's going to be a title you're going to come back to over and over and over. And if you're like me, you'll be watching this every single Halloween. Next is Spine 897, a full 2-disc special edition that is the definitive to-date release of Kubrick's masterpiece, Barry Lyndon. This is from a brand new 4K restoration, and it does restore the film's original 1.66:1 ratio, which was a major issue on Warner Brothers' Blu-ray release. The film, like most Kubrick films, does have the whole aspect ratio debate, and it really is perhaps never as important as it is with this film, which was so meticulously photographed to capture the spirit and feel of the historical period setting, and most famously using the Zeiss lenses designed for shooting footage on the actual moon to capture the film entirely in natural light and candlelight. So I do think this is the most transportative, if that's a word, historical film ever made. It is one of the most intricately beautiful visual experiences you will ever have. I don't think any film has ever captured the visual flavor of actually being in a particular place and time in history than this film. It is iconic for good reason, but it does have a very, not necessarily slow, it has a very measured, slower pacing to it, and it is a little over 3 hours, so it isn't necessarily going to be as digestible for most film watchers. So there are a lot of people who have to get used to it over time, or it takes several viewings. So do keep that in mind if you've never seen this film before. But of course, for Kubrick fanatics like myself, this is a must. And I remember I completely was just transported when I first saw this film on an old CRT with seeing it for the first time, even in those compromised in that compromised viewing, in terms of just seeing a video copy on an old CRT. Again, this is a brand new 4K restoration. It does thankfully have, in addition to the 5.1 remix, it has the film's original mono audio, which is not on a lot of previous releases. It wasn't always kept. It is newly transferred here and sounds excellent. It does sound better than previous releases. So I think this is, to date, the definitive version of the film. Plus, it has a literal boatload of fantastic extras in this beautiful must-own 2-disc release, and the only way this could be improved upon really is if it arrives in a 4K UHD, since this is a 4K master. So I don't know if it was HDR graded, but I would presume it is, since Warner Brothers has been doing the other Kubrick titles they own pretty much one at a time. We now have Full Metal Jacket and Clockwork Orange in 2001 on UHD, so Barry Lyndon could come at some point, and of course it would seem like that would be a natural for Criterion to upgrade to UHD. However, until any sort of plans are announced, this is still one of their absolute must-own Blu-ray titles. Next is Spine 917, again a beautiful 4K Sony restoration of the masterpiece The Awful Truth from 1937, one of the all-time greatest screwball comedy films ever made, one of the great romantic comedies, and the film that forever solidified Cary Grant as a screen icon. He is paired here with Irene Dunne, one of the great male-female pairings ever in films, directed by the great Leo McCarey. This is just one of the truly magic films you will come back to time and time again, with this beautiful artwork. Again, from a 4K Sony restoration, the audio is from that same restoration and sounds fantastic. It hasn't been messed with, so I do think this is the definitive release of the film to date on home video. It is unbelievably improved over the previous preservation versions that Sony had put out on DVD, which had significant damage still in them. So with this modern restoration, they have really vaulted ahead. We do get some really nice video extras in addition to the great booklet essay. So again, this is just a must-own release, the best release to date of one of the immortal films of all time, really. On a similar vein, we have Spine 1009, again a Cary Grant starring romantic comedy and also screwball comedy masterpiece. This directed by George Cukor, co-starring the incredible, legendary Katharine Hepburn. That's 1938's Holiday. This is a film I absolutely adore. It's not as often seen or talked about. It's, of course, based on the famous stage play that was already previously turned into a film and is amazingly included in this release as a bonus. So this is actually a dual film release. You're getting the 1938 George Cukor directed masterpiece, which I think is the definitive version. It does make some changes to the original play, and this film is just a magical experience that I've loved from the first time I saw it. This may very well be my very favorite Katharine Hepburn role in a film, and her chemistry with Cary Grant is just indescribably magical. It's an incredible film, and it's one that I do show people a lot or really try to champion because it doesn't get as often discussed when you're talking about the other screwball comedies starring Cary Grant. It was featured in Columbia's old DVD box set, but it was one of the two films in that set that doesn't get talked about as much as, say, The Awful Truth or His Girl Friday, when it really stands shoulder to shoulder with them. It is a little bit different. Does have some heavier dramatic elements coming from the stage play, but it is expertly handled by George Cukor, and if I had to choose my favorite Cukor-directed film, it very well would most likely be this film, 1938's Holiday, which is truly saying something since Cukor is one of the most legendary directors of all of motion picture history. So I cannot encourage people to check this out highly enough. The restoration is incredible. Again, a 4K restoration by Sony. The picture and audio is vastly improved over the old DVD release, which again was from Preservation Elements. And again, in addition to a fantastic extras package, you are actually getting the original early talkie screen adaptation of the film. So this is technically two films for the price of one. And although it's not fully restored, the original version is in HD and is a fascinating presentation because it's very rarely seen or discussed. It is maybe a little bit more of a direct literal adaptation of the play in a lot of ways, but it has particular points of its own that are very positive, and it's fascinating to be able to compare the two because, of course, this is from 1938 and the earlier film is from the other side of the decade, so it's very much more of an early talkie. So that's 1938's Holiday, another must-own Criterion release from a breathtaking Sony restoration, and again, this is truly one of my favorite films, of course, as are pretty much all of these. Continuing in this vein once more, we have Spine 1085, Criterion's release of the masterpiece The Immortal Bringing Up Baby, directed by Howard Hawks, one of the immortal screwball comedies, one of the greatest comedies, period, one of the truly magical immortal films that lives in your brain ever after, and you find yourself quoting till the end of time. This is another beautiful 4K restoration with Warner Brothers this time. This is, again, absolutely game-changing in picture and sound. This is easily the finest release the film has ever had. And I've even seen prints of this film that did not look and sound anywhere near this good. And they really had a lot of work to do because the elements that they had to work from were not in very good shape. So this is really revelatory and has also amazing audio that is far advanced over previous releases. I have reviewed this disc as well, so if you want further information, you can look at my video review. You get this wonderful art design that carries the leopard motif, so basically Baby is in the entirety of the package. A wonderful essay and a fantastic extras package that is, again, a very fully loaded supplemental section, and it does port over Peter Bogdanovich's commentary from the Warner Brothers DVD release. So Again, another immortal film, immortalized in a perfect Criterion Collection Blu-ray release, which is why I cannot recommend it strongly enough. And then lastly, we have Spine 1099, which I've also reviewed on this channel, and easily Criterion's best Blu-ray release of 2021, one of the best discs of last year, a truly must-own disc, 1940s majestic masterpiece directed by the great Raoul Walsh, High Sierra, the film that forever immortalized Humphrey Bogart as the icon we think of him as, matched by an incredible performance by Ida Lupino in the adaptation of the W.R. Burnett novel written by John Huston in terms of the screenwriting. This is from a brand new 4K restoration, which absolutely is breathtakingly beautiful. It looks vivid. It looks like when you get to see a print of this film, but even better. The audio is the best release of the film in terms of the audio quality that it has ever seen. It is far beyond the DVD and Laserdisc releases that I've owned and watched for years. So it was like seeing this film fresh for the first time, literally, even though I could quote passages of the dialogue. I think this is one of the true masterpieces of the whole Warner Brothers studio. It's one of Bogart's most iconic and important films, and unfortunately it doesn't get talked about as much because it's overshadowed by such classics as The Maltese Falcon, Casablanca, Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And of course it was this film that really brought John Huston and Bogart together for the first time, and they would come together shortly thereafter on The Maltese Falcon, which is also one of the greatest films ever made. Now, this is a beautiful 4K restoration, but in addition to a fantastic stuffed extras package that includes a feature-length amazing documentary on Raoul Walsh that really shows just how amazing of an artist he was. He is truly one of the unheralded master legendary directors of the cinema. But this is also a 2-disc affair, because Criterion has included the 1949 Western remake, Colorado Territory, which is also directed by Raoul Walsh. It was also scanned in 4K. Unfortunately, it's not fully restored, but it is a breathtakingly beautiful transfer of a truly great re-envisioning of the film. So it's not just everybody's on horses because it's a Western. It is reworked, it is changed around, and it is a whole different experience. Some people do prefer the remake to the original. And of course, the film was remade for a second time in the 1950s by Warner Brothers, and that film starred Jack Palance. But this is an absolutely incredible must-own release. Everything is fantastic. There is no better release of this film anywhere, and the only way this could be improved upon is if it did eventually get a 4K UHD release, perhaps with an HDR grade. It is absolutely incredible. I never thought this film would get the royal treatment like this. I'm so pleased that it did. And again, in both picture and sound, it is incredible. It is like seeing the film for the first time, and it absolutely obliterates all prior releases. So if I'm honest, if you were only to pick up one standard Criterion Blu-ray release, I think in terms of best bang for your buck and having fantastic extras and having multiple films in the same release for the standard price and having absolutely perfect audio-visual technical qualities, I think the absolute standout standalone Blu-ray release is High Sierra. So if you were just to pick up one Criterion Blu-ray release, I think there's no better place to start than with their release of the masterpiece High Sierra. So those are my suggestions for the Criterion sale this July. Of course, I'm always happy to hear what you guys are interested in or what you may have already picked up, so definitely leave your comments below. I love reading and interacting with every one of them, and I myself am probably, with all the sales going on everywhere with different labels, I do have to try and think with my wallet first, but I think I'm most intrigued, of course, by the new 4K Blu-ray combo releases, which are on significant savings right now. Those, of course, including Wilder's masterpiece Double Indemnity and the fantastic announcement and now release of the original Shaft film, along with its first sequel, Shaft's Big Score. So I'm very excited to check those out and compare them to prior releases as well. So I think that's probably what I'll be looking at. But again, I would love to hear what you may have already picked up from the sale or are interested in, and I hope this has been fun and informative and helped you make some selections for the Criterion half-off sale at Barnes & Noble. So as always, I just want to say keep supporting studio and boutique labels by buying physical media, keep your disc spinning, keep physical media alive, and thanks ever so much for watching.